So, as I was reading, I started thinking about epistemology. Okay, and some of you may know what epistemology is, and you may not, but I've sort of fleshed it out here a little bit, and it really comes down to this question of how do we know what we know? I have these conversations with my husband all the time. I love sci-fi fantasy. I love all the new television shows about magic and possibilities and so forth. And my husband tells me it's far-fetched. And I said, well, why is it far-fetched? He goes, because that could never happen. And I remind him about, when we used to watch Star Trek, and he used to say the same thing, that, we have a lot of those realities. And the Jetsons and their moving sidewalks, and think about the airports we've been in. We've been on those moving walkways, and think about all to think about making a telephone call and being able to see that person. We do it all the time now with Skype and Google Hangout and other things, and with FaceTime. We take as for granted. But when I was a kid, that was seen as something way out there. So this idea of how do we know what we know, and there's a couple of schools of thought here. So can we ever be certain, or should we always be in doubt? And that takes me back to that, the interpretation of reality. And that's what epistemology deals with. It deals with the validity of human knowledge. How do we know what we know? So at opposite ends of this epistemological scale are objectivist and constructivist. Now there's lots of other ones. I'm not trying to reduce it just to two, but these are the two that are sort of the biggies, the heavyweights. And there's all kinds of variations. There's classical rationalism. There's all kinds of stuff. But for now, this will help us, I think about why fantasy and science fiction is onerous to some and absolutely embraced by others. So an objectivist epistemology says that all knowledge comes from the senses. In other words, if you can see it and hear it, smell it, taste it, it's real. If you can't, it's not. It rejects faith or mysticism as a means of knowledge. So that includes religious faith, or any kind of a mystery religion or a mysticism. If you can't see it, it's not real. So that's an objectivist epistemology. A constructivist epistemology, on the other hand, says that knowledge and reality do not have an absolute or objective value, or at least we don't have a way of knowing that. In constructivist epistemology, the knower interprets and constructs a reality based on experiences and interactions with the environment. This is the arbitrariness of what was reality. Rather than thinking in terms of truth as a match for reality, think in terms of viability, that it could be true. This is a viable explanation for truth. This is a viable explanation for knowledge. Now, social constructivism is a variation of constructivism. It's a little less radical because it pulls on the community or a social group to decide. So the consensus as to the ultimate criteria to judge knowledge, truth or reality, given to constructions on which people as a social group agree. And we can look at that in terms of social groups, cultural groups, and so forth and so on. So, and this kind of is interesting too, because a lot of the fantasy and science fiction texts are objected to by religious groups. If you looked at the banned book list, there's four biggies. It's religious viewpoint, sexual explicitness, violence, and offensive language. Racism is in there too, but those are the four biggies. So many of these books are banned or have been challenged because of their religious viewpoint, and because it suggests that there's another way of looking at the world, that it tends to either discount religion or it reinterprets religion in a way that becomes upsetting to certain religious groups. And so I wonder about that, because that's it's really interesting. So I wouldn't say that all religious groups have constructivist epistemologies, but I wouldn't say they had objectivist epistemologies too. And I'm not picking on religious groups. I'm sorry if I don't mean to offend anybody, but this is the reality of it. That these religious viewpoints are often the point. So Harry Potter books were burned and banned because they had magic and supernatural happenings, and religious groups rejected that, and they didn't see that as a possibility, So I just wonder about these things. So just a quick lesson in epistemology, and it might help us think about why some people, again, really like this genre and others don't. Now, my husband is I wouldn't say he's an objectivist, but he does ground himself in what he considers reality and what he can see and feel and hear. But that doesn't mean that he doesn't see beyond that as well. But sometimes I think he forgets that he does. So anyway, I want to go on just to one more piece, because I want this about having a little bit of just enough science and math, in science fiction to push our thinking. And so I taught a unit in high school on bioethics, because we can, should we? And it was for an English classroom, but we did a ton of science in there, and we read some scientific text and so forth and so on. But the crowning point of this unit was literature circles. We read 3 separate books, and three groups read these books, and they got to choose which one they wanted to read in literature circles. And these books are about cloning. Double Helix is about Eli, who gets a job in a laboratory out of school. At the same time, he's asking questions about his parents, and he comes to find out that he has a sister somewhere. And so what happens is that there is this undertone of using DNA and cells for something other than it was intended for. It's a really good book, and you should read it. House of the Scorpion looks at cloning as a way of organ harvest. And these people are cloned, just to harvest their organs to keep people going, so that when their organs play out, they just get new organs. They treat these clones as animals. They stunt their brains at birth, so that they cannot think for themselves or feel for themselves. And Michael escapes that. For some reason, he's not that's not done to him at birth. And the story follows Michael. Another interesting twist in this book is that it's in a sort of made-up world between United States and Mexico, where there's this area where drugs are grown, poppies are grown to harvest for drugs. So there's a couple of different angles in the book. Now, House of the Scorpions won a ton of book awards. It won the National Book Award, Newbery Honor, Michael Prince, and it was a runner-up for a couple others. Star Split was one of the, well, it was a great book, but it wasn't written as well as the other two. But really still quite good. And again, it's a dystopian world where it's an all-female, it's a matriarchal society. And the leader is cloned, okay? The leader is like the 14th version of the same person, and is cloned over and over again. So it's really an interesting book, and it really looks at, what could happen. That's that what if. So that's it. I just wanted to share those things with you and help you think again about this genre. And the other thing I want to say is that as a former high school teacher, I used to get a lot of objection or hear a lot of objection from other English teachers that it didn't have literary value, these texts, that it wasn't anywhere near quality that some of the classics have. And I would just kind of, I'd kind of shrug my shoulders. I just didn't want to get into a big, long, discussion with this. But again, some of these teachers were teaching Scarlet Letter, which is a great text, but they couldn't see beyond the possibility that just that text to other possibilities, that there could be books that could help kids to be able to enter these more canonical texts, and that just a steady diet of kind of what they called old-fashioned and outdated literature, just because some people see it as classic. What is that doing for them in terms of reading ability and critical thinking and higher order thinking and so forth and so on? So anyway, that's my musings about all this, and I'm so glad that you enjoyed reading these texts this week, and I'll look forward to reading your picture book analyses, which I haven't even looked at yet, but I will, and look forward to our next discussion blog. So thanks a lot, everybody.